Okay, so this one is about the nature of entrustment. And I've spoken in other podcasts about the self-regulating mechanism of appreciation. And I've touched briefly on how that works in terms of self-regulation, but I think after I share my perspective on the nature of entrustment, it'll paint more of a complete picture as to the way appreciation enables self-regulation to take place. And I'll give you an example. Entrustment means you're entrusting someone. You're imbuing someone with your trust. When you entrust, is you take the trust that you have and you imbue it into someone else or something. And this is kind of pretty much how a typical trust works. Is if you've got a pile of money, you ask someone to look after that money and to utilize it for X, Y, Z, to serve these beneficiaries. And so you appoint that person as a trustee in terms of a trust, and the nature of the entrustment is X, Y, Z as per the Constitution. Now that's common law based. You can incorporate a trust, which sucks it into the law of statute, but a trust can be established very, very easily. You can write a constitution on a napkin, and in truth, you can verbally entrust someone, and it establishes a bond. Because common law just is. You don't need to, you don't actually need to keep track of it, because you're establishing bonds through your word all day, every day. You're imbuing your power into authorities, seen and unseen. You're giving your power away to many, many different things through your word, and through inadvertently establishing relationships that are fundamentally based upon obligation. And quite often that's unspoken, but it's definitely inferred. And, we do this by creating codependent relationships and all these kinds of things. But I've done a podcast on that topic in depth called The Nature of Sovereignty, if you want to check that out. So common law, people say, you think of the law as like a textbook, and inside there is the law. Common law is not like that. Common law just means the nature of the universe. It's natural law. And your word is the mechanism for you wielding your power. And when you inadvertently give it away to an unseen authority, or any form of authority, then that's how you're wielding your power, because your power resides within your body. And this is why I'm so excited about the mechanism of, blockchain and smart contracts, because we finally have a way to just keep track of common law, the law of nature. And it's just so we can see it in action and keep a record of it, rather than establishing a new form of law. We're just figuring out a way to keep a ledger of it. So that'll do for that topic now. This is about the nature of entrustment. And so how does self-regulation work, where it's all appreciation based, meaning, the only way that money is changing hands is because people are making donations to express their appreciation for the receiving of a gift. And it only works because of trust. It can only work because of trust. And really, this is the only reason banks were ever established, is because there needed to be a mechanism for placing trust into a system where people are wanting to trade things that actually have value. And, if you back in the day, if you had gold coins and you wanted to keep them safe, then banks were established because that was somewhere that you could trust to look after and take care of your money or your precious items. Now, over time, banks realized that, trust is really valuable. The trust that these people have imbued in us is super valuable. And so we can create another instrument of value, which is a promise to pay. And these evolved into promissory notes, which is kind of like a check. If you remember checks, like having a checkbook and writing a check. You're giving someone a piece of paper with a promise to pay on it, and that person is trusting that you have that money in your bank. That person is trusting that the bank is trustworthy, and they're trusting that their bank is trustworthy, that they can take that check down to their bank, and they are only willing to receive that check because they trust you have that money. They trust that your bank has that money, and that theirs has it, and that they can exchange it. So when they go to their bank, hand the check in, their bank has to trust the person that gave you the check's bank, and it's just all trust-based. It's all based on trust. And trust it's everything. And so when people are building blockchain-based technology, like using it to build platforms, what it does is it imbues trust into the system, because everything is distributed. I won't go into blockchain technology right now, but it imbues trust into a system that has distributed authority. Now, what a lot of people don't realize about blockchain is, because the authority is distributed, it's completely fragmented, so there's no consolidation. And so if everything's totally fragmented, everyone's got a copy of the ledger on their machine, and when a transaction happens on the blockchain, it has to crawl everyone's machine to make sure it's all legitimate. And this is why it's so safe and very difficult to hack. Some people would say impossible, but my perspective is that everything that can be created can be uncreated. So I wouldn't go that far, but now we've got the problem where of the economy and all of the markets that exist in the economy, and that is all the issues that exist within, like Amazon, within freelancer websites and marketplaces, is massive fragmentation. These big pools of expertise and resources, and very low engagement. There's no consolidation, and this is a fundamental component of the evolution of nature, is that it fragments and then it consolidates. So if you look at the Big Bang, for example, without getting too esoteric, but a massive explosion, and all these particles, space dust hurtling through space, tearing the fabric of space, and eventually, when that energy begins to run out, the gravity of that particle begins to attract particles of like vibration, and so all those fragmented particles, they come back together and begin to form planets and stars and more complex forms of matter. So that is the nature of all of life, is it fragments and then it consolidates. And even if at a biological level, if you look at a cell, the process of mitosis, the cell splits in half, so it fragments and then it consolidates, and grows bigger. And if a whole bunch of those split cells begin bumping into each other, and they'll eventually become symbiotic, and form a membrane around them and become a new form of, a multi-cell organism. So everything in nature fragments and then it consolidates, and the same is happening with blockchain, totally fragmented and distributed. And now what we're seeing is the issue of that fragmentation, and the proposed solution now that we're now seeing is entrustment, which is where you take people who are, people who are on the blockchain, and we turn them into a source of trust. And so we say, instead of pinging, everyone on the blockchain, we're going to utilize this node, this center, to imbue trust into the system. Just like a bank, we're going to say, yep, we trust that person. We trust they're not going to tamper with anything. We trust that they're not going to hack anything. We trust that the way that they manage the information is totally safe. And it's a new form of bank that imbues trust into a distributed system. And this is what we're seeing, is this is now helping to solve the issue of the horrendously long transaction processing times that are notorious for blockchain, which is the elephant in the room with blockchain technology. But it will come right for sure. And so it's all about trust. And so entrustment in the context of collaborative gifting. So I'll give you an example of how self-regulation would work using entrustment, which means, obligation-free gifting. So let's use something practical, like a practical example. Let's say you're renting a home, and, COVID hits and it significantly impacts your income, and your capacity to pay your rent has diminished, and you can no longer pay the obligated amount of rent. So let's look at that same scenario in context of an entrustment-based collaborative gifting. So your house that you're renting is actually being donated to you. It's a gift. And that what you're donating to the person who's providing you that gift is your expression of appreciation for receiving that gift. And so in that scenario, what happens is it always ignites collaboration. It always ignites collaboration. And when I talk about collaboration, you'll come to know this about me, that I'm always looking for a how can we. Collaborate. You are not collaborating unless you're saying to someone, how can we? And if you try to say how can we to someone and it feels out of context, it means both parties have not yet laid their cards on the table. So you must reveal your ideal scenario. And when I mean your ideal scenario is, it's about your capability and your capacity. Those two mechanisms alone, capability and capacity, can easily sum up your power. Your personal power is your capability and then your capacity in the world. If you have lots of resources, you have a lot of latent potential. If you have lots of expertise and skills, you have a lot of latent potential, but limited capacity. And in the same way, if you have a ton of resources, you have latent potential, but without the necessary expertise and skills to utilize those resources, they can lay dormant. So if you have money, then that's latent potential, and all of those can be expressed as your power, and that is your ability to influence the environment around you. So your capability and your capacity. If you're entering into a collaboration, what you're really wanting is to understand each other's capability and capacity. And for the purpose of understanding your desire to appreciate someone's gift and your capacity to appreciate it. So in the context of you're renting a home, and let's say it's based on collaborative gifting, obligation-free gifting, and you're entering into a collaboration because your capacity to appreciate the home that you're receiving as a gift has diminished. And so this is what we would call a tension, not a tension, but tension. And tension always means it's time for reconciliation. It means that collaboration needs to happen. Otherwise, the tension just grows. And so you say to the person who owns the home and who's gifting you that home, my capacity to appreciate this gift has been diminished. I would love to remain in this home. The issue is my business has been impacted by COVID. I know that by this date, my capacity to appreciate this home will be restored. And if you were, I still, if I can remain in this home, I would be very willing to appreciate this home, even beyond what I'm appreciating it now, because it would mean so much to me to be able to stay on this home impact free. And so the person who's gifting the home, and this is where appreciation comes in as the mechanism for self-regulation. But entrustment is the component that really matters most, because the person who's giving the gift, who's gifting the gift, they're doing it obligation free. They're not obliged to say yes. And the reality is our capacity to gift is always a reflection of how appreciated we're feeling. If you gift a gift to someone, there's no obligation. But if they don't appreciate it, it hurts. And so what it does is next time you may not feel as inspired to give a gift to that person in the same way if it's not appreciated. So it is entirely obligation free, but understanding that when we don't feel appreciated for the gifts we are giving, our nature is to take that gift and to give it to where it is appreciated. And this is how the mechanism works. So if you're the person who is in the home, the owner, not the owner of the home, but if you're the equivalent of a tenant, and your ability to appreciate the gift is gone, then you cannot avoid the fact that the person who's gifting the gift will begin to feel unappreciated, and they'll want to gift that gift to someone who does appreciate it and can appreciate it. And this is where appreciation has nothing to do with gratitude. Being grateful for something is not the same as appreciating it. Appreciating it means you're imbuing it with your presence or with money, because money is your latent potential to appreciate something. So being thankful and grateful is not the same as appreciating something. So the person who's gifting the gift, they have a decision to make. Do I trust this person? Do I trust what they're telling me is true? Do I, am I going to feel unappreciated for gifting this gift? Would I prefer to gift it to someone who does appreciate it or who can appreciate it? and both parties are obligation free. Both parties are obligation free. Now, if in the scenario where these two parties know each other really well, they've been, they have an established relationship, they know each other, they know the person gifting the house knows how much the other person appreciates it, and they might say, listen, I really appreciate having, gifting my home to someone who I know truly loves it and gets so much satisfaction out of it, and if who had the capacity would appreciate it even more than they are. And so yeah, I'm happy to continue gifting the gift. Now, over time, if that person doesn't keep to their word, because your word is everything. When you are obligation free, you are truly free, but your word truly is your bond. And this is why trust becomes so important, because it's everything. If someone cannot trust your word, you will not be very appealing as someone who has the potential to appreciate other people's gifts. Because you say that you can appreciate, that you want to appreciate things, but you're not appreciating, but you don't follow through with your word. And this is why, I talk about on the episode about sovereignty. I talk about how people don't really understand what it means to be sovereign and free. Your word is absolutely everything. And on a platform like I'm involved with building now, a collaborative e-commerce platform that also facilitates collaborative gifting, reputation is just absolutely everything. And so I'll give you another scenario. Let's say buying a house. I get asked this one sometimes. How can you use collaborative gifting to facilitate, to replace what would typically be buying and selling a house? There's no way someone's going to donate a house. It's all pledging based. So you typically go to an auction. Right now, you'd go to an auction and you'd bid on a house, and if you win the auction, you're legally bound to buy that house. In a collaborative gifting scenario, there's a pledge. There's a pledge that replaces the bid. So I'm pledging to gift this, and the meaning of a pledge is a solemn promise. So it's an expression of intent, but it's not binding. It's not binding. But here's the self-regulating mechanism. When you have it operating on a digital platform, then if someone pledges and doesn't keep to their word, their reputation is damaged. And if their reputation is damaged, their people will trust in them less. And so people will not harm their reputation, because it's absolutely everything. It's absolutely everything. Trust is everything. And this is why I love it, and this is why I see collaborative gifting as a gateway to, a community, or, even a nation that is truly based upon self-responsibility and individual sovereignty. We are definitely not ready for it now. But it's because the impact of your word, of being reckless with your word, can be potentially so detrimental, and very difficult to recover if you can't keep to your word. Now, and because it's self-regulating, it's like nature. If it, let's say, okay, what's some random metaphor I can use? Okay, I can see a bird right now. So let's say a bird, let's say a bird is hovering around someone who's fishing because they want to snatch the fish off the fishing hook. And let's say, the bird doesn't realize that there's a hook and that it can get hurt. And then that bird goes down to snatch the fish and accidentally swallows the hook, and chokes on it. This is not the metaphor I should have used, but I'm doing it spontaneously, so bear with me. Now, you can't let that, you can't let the bird off the hook. You can't let the bird off the hook. And so, because nature is reality, your actions have consequences. Every decision you make is creating a new reality. And so, in the same way, because your word is your expression of your truth, of your free will. And so if you pledge, and then for whatever reason you can't follow through, there could be a legitimate reason. Nonetheless, just like in nature, the consequences mean that you cannot be let off the hook. You cannot be let off the hook. You have to deal with the consequences, with the reality of the fact that you pledged, and for whatever reason, doesn't matter, you were unable to follow through with your word. This imbues real self-responsibility into the mechanism, because if you cannot be trusted within the system, then it will really significantly impact your ability to thrive. But it's like in nature, nothing gets left behind, and it doesn't matter how impotent some form of life is in nature. There is always a mechanism for that to, by following its nature, for it to receive what it needs in order to thrive. Unless something becomes extinct. And, the best way to describe something, the reason why something in nature becomes extinct, is because what it is imbuing into the ecosystem is not as beneficial as what it needs to take out of it. And, but I mean, that sounds inhumane, but the point I'm trying to make is that your reputation is absolutely everything. And the more someone can trust you, the more they will recognize you as someone who has not just the willingness, but the capacity to appreciate gifts that they receive. So entrustment, it is absolutely everything. It is absolutely everything. So, yeah, buying a house, absolutely you can do it. Make a pledge, which replaces a bid on an auction. And, I think, what I think how this will actually unfold is that there will be, organizations that are formed that are trustworthy, that can appreciate other people's gifts on behalf of other people. And this is how you can begin to circumnavigate the issue of people who have damaged their reputation in the system, is they can work with, an organization that people do trust, and work together to facilitate gifting for people who have damaged their reputation. And this is where I don't want to get too complex yet, because I think I'm just introducing these concepts to people now, and I don't want to flood people's brains, because there is a lot more to come. But this is where the mechanism for restitution comes in. So you can utilize gifting to restore your reputation through willingly gifting. And but it's like what you're demonstrating is not just your willingness, but you're demonstrating that you're following through with appreciating things that are completely obligation free. So it's not like you're only doing it because you want to be appreciated. You're doing it because you want to be seen as someone who is restoring their reputation through demonstration. And there are many ways to do this using your gifts, being your expertise, skills, or your resources. So that's still a new-ish concept in my mind. I haven't completely fleshed it out, but I know there's huge potential for the restoring of reputation through collaborative projects that bring restitution. Now, the thing I haven't reconciled yet is that in an appreciation-based or collaborative gifting scenario, there is never any loss because everything is obligation-free. Nonetheless, there are still, if people are not following through on their word or their pledge, there is still a loss. There is an opportunity cost of, breaking your will. So that'll come, inevitably I'll ponder that and come up with something, but I really just wanted to cover entrustment, to help people understand the reason why trust is critical to anything like an economy, but especially a gifting economy or collaborative gifting. Or actually, I also want to stress that I'm talking about collaborative gifting a lot at the moment, but I'm a huge advocate for utilizing collaborative gifting to initiate a commercial project as well. So those are that would be to build a business that is a standalone viable business, but utilizing collaborative gifting as a mechanism to initiate it so that there's no dependency on money. It's more people's inspiration to share their gifts that gets it ignited, and then everyone shares in the commercial success of the venture once it's proven itself and it can stand alone and there's money moving around. So you'll figure out that I'm big on transitions. I'm not the kind of person that's ever going to say this is bad and this is wrong and we need to change and standing on a soapbox. I'm a person that's always looking at what is the ideal scenario and then figuring out what is the most natural transition from where we are now to where we ultimately want to be, and really just beginning to take steps towards initiating that transition, so that it's not, there's no big shock, and there's no, we don't cause more harm than we do good by, destroying something now, and not actually truly realizing the hidden benefit of why that thing exists now. Because everything that any human being perceives as having taken their power, I can promise you that it was inadvertently given away. And the reason it was inadvertently given away is because in the moment it was given away, there was a perceived benefit that you're still receiving, but are probably taking for granted. So that goes for whether it's a codependent relationship you have, or whether it's your relationship with the government or any other form of authority, or even a higher authority that you might call a god. People inadvertently give their power away to a higher power so that they don't have to be responsible for the decisions that need to be made, or the change in behavior that has to take place to get them to where they really want to be. Your word is how you wield your power, and your ability to follow through on what you say represents your ability to express that power. So that's it for the nature of entrustment. And I'm actively involved in pilot projects to utilize this method to facilitate the buying and selling of a house, and also a mechanism to replace renting a house. And it's very interesting. It's very exciting. I think the thing that I love is that at some point with people, a light just goes on. It's kind of like I'm speaking Swahili to people in the beginning, and then at some point it just clicks and the light goes on, and they're like, I get it. And I think, but the thing is people don't trust. People don't trust, and if you don't know someone, they may be trustworthy, but you have to trust is earned over time. And so what is the only mechanism that's going to ignite a system like this? The only real thing is actually the feeling within your body that you're inspired to gift something. And this is really what I'm seeing as the first step, is how can we come together and collaborate on a multitude of projects that we're inspired to give of our gifts to. Let's not start with gifting a house. We'll build up to that. But in the meantime, what is something that I can willingly gift today? Ideally your gifts in terms of your skills and the gifts that you're imbued with. That it doesn't matter if I get anything in return. It doesn't even matter whether it's appreciated or not. All that matters is that I'm utilizing that gift now, and in the process of using that gift, I'm appreciating it myself. So, in that scenario, it's almost inevitable that you'll receive in one way or another. So, okay, I'll leave it there. That's it for the nature of entrustment. Talk soon.